Suburbia has a funny way of hiding monsters. They don't look like the ones in the movies. They wear golf shirts, drive luxury SUVs, and spend their Saturdays manicuring their lawns with military precision. My monster was named Richard. Richard lived next door to me in a beautiful, historic neighborhood in North Carolina. For 3 years, we had a perfectly pleasant, quiet relationship. We waved across the fence, we made small talk about the weather, and we minded our own business. But then, Richard decided he wanted a swimming pool. Not just any pool, a massive, resort-style infinity pool with a sprawling multi-level cedar deck. The problem? My backyard was bordered by a row of beautiful, 80-year-old Japanese maple trees. They were planted by my grandmother, and they were the crown jewel of my property. They also stood directly on the property line. One Thursday morning, while I was away at work, Richard didn't just build his pool, he hired a cheap, uncertified crew to cut down 3 of my grandmother's maples and construct his cedar deck 6 feet onto my side of the line. When I came home and saw the empty space where those historic trees had stood, my heart broke. When I saw his ugly cedar deck sitting squarely on my grass, my blood boiled. I went to Richard's door, crying, demanding to know why he did this. Richard looked down his nose at me, crossed his arms, and laughed. "It's my property, Clara. The old maples were dying anyway, and they were blocking my sunlight. If you don't like it, call a lawyer. But just so you know, my brother-in-law is the head of the county zoning board. Good luck." He shut the door in my face. He thought he was the king of the cul-de-sac. He thought a quiet single woman living alone wouldn't have the stomach for a fight. What Richard didn't know was that my uncle is one of the top timber lawyers in the state. And under North Carolina law, cutting down historic trees on someone else's land carries a penalty of triple damages. In exactly 30 days, Richard wouldn't just be losing his new pool, he would be losing his entire house. I inherited my house from my grandmother. It was a 1920s craftsman with a wraparound porch and a massive, deep backyard. The Japanese maples were more than just trees to me. They were a living connection to the woman who raised me. They were irreplaceable. Richard had bought the house next door 2 years prior. He was a retired corporate executive who treated our quiet neighborhood like his personal fiefdom. He had already forced another neighbor to remove a bird feeder because he claimed it attracted unrefined birds, and he regularly complained to the city if anyone's grass was a millimeter over the regulated 3 inches. I had always kept the peace. When his dog dug up my petunias, I let it go. When his leaf blower woke me up at 6 a.m. on Sundays, I put in earplugs. I thought being a good neighbor meant turning the other cheek, but Richard took my kindness for weakness. The pool project had been in the works for months. He had asked me casually if I would mind if he trimmed the maples back to make room for his deck. I told him very clearly, in writing, that he could not touch the trees. They were historic, fragile, and on my property. I thought that was the end of it, but Richard didn't care about no. He waited until I was out of town for a 3-day business conference in Atlanta. When I pulled into my driveway on Thursday evening, the first thing I noticed was the smell of fresh cedar and sawdust. The second thing I noticed was the empty sky. The beautiful, vibrant red canopy that had shaded my porch for my entire life was gone. In its place was a raw, muddy scar. 3 of the 4 maples had been chainsawed down to the stump, and sitting directly over the stumps was the framework of Richard's brand new, multi-level cedar deck, extending 6 feet past the old fence line and into my yard. I ran over to the fence, my chest tight. The construction crew was packing up their tools. Richard was standing on his new deck, holding a glass of white wine, looking like a conqueror, surveying his new empire. I screamed, my voice shaking. "What did you do? You cut down my trees! You built on my land!" He took a sip of his wine, looking completely unbothered. "Oh, Clara, don't be dramatic. I had a surveyor look at it. The line is actually 6 feet over. The trees were on my side. I just reclaimed what was mine. And honestly, it looks much cleaner now, doesn't it?" I knew he was lying. I had the original 1920 deed in my safe. But Richard was rich, connected, and arrogant. He thought he could bully me into accepting a settlement, or just drag the legal process out until I ran out of money and gave up. He didn't realize I wasn't gonna play his game. I was gonna play the law. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on my porch, staring at the empty space in my yard, feeling a deep, cold anger settle into my bones. The next morning, I called my uncle, David, David is a semi-retired attorney who specializes in land use and timber trespass, a very specific, highly punitive branch of property law. When I told him what Richard had done, I could hear his tone shift from comforting uncle to apex predator. David said, his voice deadly calm. "Did he cut them down completely?" "Yes," I sobbed. "Down to the stumps. And he built his deck right over them." "Did you give him any permission, verbal or written, to touch those trees?" "No. In fact, I sent him an email last month specifically telling him not to touch them. I have his reply acknowledging it." I heard David chuckle on the other end of the line. It was a cold, terrifying sound. "Clara, under North Carolina General Statute 99A1.1, if someone knowingly cuts down trees on another person's property without permission, they are liable for triple the value of the timber. And these aren't just any trees. They are mature, historic Japanese maples. Do you know how much it costs to source, transport, and replant an 80-year-old mature Japanese maple?" "No," I said. "About $45,000 per tree," David said. "And he cut down 3 of them. That's $135,000 in raw timber value. Tripled under the statute, that is $405,000. Plus legal fees, plus the cost of restoring your land." My jaw dropped. $400,000? "And that's just the trees," David continued. "He also built a permanent structure on your land. That's a criminal encroachment. We are going to have a certified independent surveyor out there tomorrow morning. Do not say a word to Richard. Just let the surveyor do his work." On Saturday morning, a professional surveying crew arrived at my house. They spent 4 hours measuring, placing brass pins, and spray painting bright pink lines across the grass. Richard saw them from his window. He came out onto his deck, looking slightly less confident now. "Clara," he called out, "what's going on? Who are these people?" I didn't answer. I just stood on my porch, drinking my coffee, and watched the surveyor spray paint a bright pink line directly through the middle of Richard's brand new cedar deck. The survey confirmed what I already knew. The property line was exactly where the old fence had been. Richard hadn't just built 6 feet over. He had knowingly and deliberately stolen my land to fit his pool design because his own yard wasn't wide enough to meet the city's setback requirements. On Monday, David filed a formal lawsuit in the County Superior Court for timber trespass, civil encroachment, and property damage. We also filed an emergency injunction to halt all further construction on the pool. It turned out Richard's brother-in-law on the zoning board didn't exist. It was a complete bluff to scare me off. Richard had hired an unlicensed contractor and hadn't even pulled a permit for the pool or the deck because he knew would never pass inspection. When the city inspector saw the survey and the lack of permits, he immediately posted a bright orange stop work order on Richard's front door. 2 days later, Richard came to my house. He wasn't laughing anymore, he looked stressed, his polo shirt was wrinkled, and he was holding a folder. "Clara, look," he said, trying to force a friendly smile. "I think we got off on the wrong foot. There was obviously a misunderstanding with the property line. I'm willing to offer you $10,000 to buy that 6-foot strip of land. It's a very generous offer for a bit of grass." I looked at him, my expression completely blank. "The trees were worth $45,000 each, Richard," I said, "and they were my grandmother's. The land is not for sale." "10,000 is more than enough," he snapped. "You're being unreasonable. You can't win this. I have resources." "My uncle is David Vance," I replied quietly. "We've already filed the lawsuit. I'll see you in court, Richard." The court case didn't take long. Richard's high-priced lawyer took one look at our certified survey, the email evidence of my explicit refusal, and the North Carolina timber statute, and told Richard he was completely defenseless. If we went to trial, a jury would destroy him. The judge issued a summary judgment in our favor. The ruling was brutal. First, Richard was ordered to pay $380,000 in damages for the destruction of the historic trees and land restoration. Second, he was ordered to completely remove the encroaching structure from my property within 14 days. Which brings us to yesterday morning. At 8 a.m., a professional demolition crew hired by my attorney arrived at my house. They brought a massive yellow excavator. Richard was standing on his porch, his face pale, clutching a cup of coffee. His wife was next to him, crying. The demolition crew set up their equipment, aligned the excavator arm with the bright pink survey line, and began to work. With one massive sweep of the hydraulic claw, the excavator ripped the outer 6 feet of Richard's beautiful, expensive cedar deck clean off the joists. The wood splintered like toothpicks. Because the deck was structurally integrated, removing the encroaching 6 feet completely compromised the rest of the structure. The entire deck collapsed into a pile of useless timber in his own yard, but it got worse for Richard. Because he had built the pool too close to the property line without a permit, the city ordered him to completely fill the pool back in with dirt to prevent structural collapse of the surrounding soil. His $500,000 resort backyard was now a giant muddy pit of broken wood and dirt. To pay the $380,000 judgment, Richard had to take out a massive second mortgage on his house. His retirement plans were completely ruined. Last week, I saw a for sale sign go up in his front yard. He can't afford the mortgage payments anymore. As for me, I received my check from the court last Friday. Next month, a professional nursery is delivering 3 fully mature 20-foot Japanese maple trees to my yard. They will be planted in the exact same spots where my grandmother's trees once stood. And every time I look out my window at those beautiful red leaves, I will remember the sound of Richard's deck splintering into pieces. If you enjoyed watching an entitled neighbor get his entire backyard demolished by the power of the law, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the Retaliation Room. We bring you new stories of sweet, calculated justice every Tuesday and Friday. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had a neighbor try to steal your land or ruin your property? How did you handle it? Until next time, respect the boundaries, and remember, karma always keeps the books.